Welcome to Brainstoryum. I'm Anna Tizard, award-winning dreampunk and deeply weird fantasy author, and yes, that's me and my fiction that's deeply weird. Explore and imagine with me the most unexpected story ideas using the surrealist word game of Exquisite Corpse. Find out more and join in at annatizard.com. This is a storytelling challenge unlike anything you've tried before. Hello, imaginative people. I'm Anna Tizard, and this is episode 77 of Brainstoryum. Well, when I look back over some of these more recent shows where I've been exploring my new theme of weird creatures, I'm starting to recognise an underlying theme cropping up, as it's actually come up in my writing before, just in different forms. Loss of control. I've often thought that the hardest stresses to bear in life are the ones that seem to render you helpless, whether that's through illness, bereavement, or some other practical limitations which a life situation presents you with, like not being able to earn enough. These make us feel out of control. And we might wonder then if we ever had any control, if the feeling of control we usually think we have is just an illusion. Please get help, by the way, if you're suffering from any of these things. Don't suffer alone. Writing fiction is not therapy per se, although it can help you face your demons a little better if you're in a not quite so bad a space, perhaps. It's why I wrote TheEmpty Danger, the first book in my series, because in March 2020, I realised I was facing the same fears that most people around the world were facing at the same time. And while it was terrifying and made me feel helpless, I also saw an opportunity to explore this potentially unifying force. Could there be something positive in there, somewhere, if I searched hard enough? I hunted with my pen, and TheEmpty Danger is the result. But I digress. I think what I'm getting to is the idea that the element of lack of control is something we can explore through suspenseful creature fiction, perhaps fantasy that helps us imagine confronting monsters. And maybe this is why the plot structure is so satisfying when the protagonist goes from being utterly terrified and threatened by the unknown, gradually piecing together scraps of information about the monster or this threat that might be quite abstract, so that it becomes less unknown by degrees. And then they have a go at fighting it and even killing it. We get that vicarious joy and relief at being able to destroy something that has stressed us out. But as I've been reading about writing monsters, I've realised that a lot of this kind of stuff is very much applicable to longer stories, novellas and novels, where you have more space in which to take a protagonist through that kind of journey of coming to understand and in some way, hopefully, overcome a monster. Turning a feeling of lack of control into a sense of having, well, some control. And I'm sure that I will be writing longer pieces that use these plot devices because I love them. There's something in there that I just love. But that doesn't mean I can't still use the practice ground of short stories. In fact, you can still fit some of these elements into a shorter piece. It's just that they can't all be realised to their fullest extent in a shorter space like that. You can show a glimpse of some of these plot elements rather than necessarily have them play out completely and dabble in these different aspects. And I already know from experience that using the word game of Exquisite Corpse means I have a much wider range of ideas at my fingertips than I would do if I were dreaming up stories on my own without any prompts at all. So it's time for some more imagination squeezers Writing is always an exercise, a bit of play. Let your mind run around a few ideas for a while and see where you land up. But first, I have some story ideas and story news from my talented listeners. Mariah, a regular listener to the show, said, "Thank you for the new episode. Fantastic as usual." Well, that's always nice to hear. Thank you very much. Mariah also responded to the spotlit demigod, which is a weird word combination that came up in the last show. And she said it could be a famous actor or singer. Either he is just loved by his audience, or he actually plays a demigod in a play. Perhaps, she said, after drinking that special coffee, I wonder if that gives him strange superpowers and he has to adapt to them. Because, of course, in the story brainstorms of the last show, I did explore the idea that coffee has a magical power. Actually, Mariah's interpretation makes a little bit more sense than mine did, as a spotlit demigod could well be a very good way of describing an amazing performer under the spotlight of a theatre. And it's worth remembering as well that we don't always have to take the Exquisite Corpse word combinations literally. I think I have a tendency to do that sometimes. I get a bit of a deer in the headlights moment. I think, what is this thing? I have to tell you exactly what this thing is, and it must be literal. Nick Vrekar had an idea based on the soporific weeping willow, which also came up in the last show. He wrote, "It was open mic night. Willow was a regular, the first volunteer. Her cheeks were already tear-stained as she approached the podium. She looked up from her journal and said, 'I am here to share my pain via second-person sonnets.' By the fourth verse, 3 people had passed out." Okay, excellent. So, yeah, that's a rather different, humorous interpretation of the soporific weeping willow. There was me getting all creepy and spooky, and then, yeah, Nick, you just took it and turned it into something funny and silly. Great stuff. Also, if you'd like to check out more of Nick Vrekar's writing, because he is a regular contributor to the show, he has recently published a short story based on an Exquisite Corpse prompt from episode 54 of Brainstoryum, which was the myopic Gorgon handed a curious ring to a bleak woodpecker. Oh my God, I can barely remember what I did for this. They're so strange that it can do that to your brain. But so Nick's story, which he's published, is called Claire and Bethany Go to the Bar. Audio version as well is available on the same webpage. It's part of a series of stories following a librarian assistant and a succubus. Of course, this time as they enter a bar run by a gorgon. It is as fun and deliciously oddball as it sounds. Just go to nvracar, that's nvracar.wordpress.com to have a read or a listen. Right, on that note, I think it is time to reach for more inspiration from the deeps of the socks of destiny. That's right, and for those who haven't listened before or have maybe forgotten, Exquisite Corpse creates a sentence putting together randomized words and phrases from listeners or players if you're playing in person to create a sentence that goes describing word noun, action, describing word noun. And so it is with some trepidation that I reach into the first sock for our first describing word, which is from Paul Thomas. Duplicate. Okay, so something or someone that has happened twice. If it's a someone, it's making me think maybe a twin. even though that's not entirely true, but still. Right, our first noun is from Sean, also known as Blue Wizard Facts. Pet dragon. Ooh, a duplicate pet dragon. How does that work? Oh, I don't know. I'm just going to reach for an action and see what happens next. If I can just unhook this from my finger. This is from Alessandro Bozzo. Struck a bargain with. Interesting. A duplicate pet dragon struck a bargain with. This is very weird. I'm feeling confused, but I'm just going to keep going and see what comes next. We have another describing word from Sean at Blue Wizard Facts. Porcelain. So are we talking an object that is made of actual porcelain, or something that looks like porcelain, or someone with porcelain skin, which could be quite creepy? In my mind, certainly, because that is very pale and cold. Or someone who is cold and hard in their personality, perhaps. Let me just get the final word. This is from Anonymous. Dinosaur. Oh, but this is weird, because I was just thinking, actually, because there's a dragon in here. So a duplicate pet dragon, in my mind, dragons are quite close to dinosaurs. I think there's some evidence somewhere, I can't remember where I've read it, that the belief in dragons stems from dinosaur bones being discovered long before we knew anything about them, and we didn't have the technology either to help us understand what this creature might be and how old these fossils were. So when I read the duplicate pet dragon, I find myself thinking that the porcelain dinosaur is the duplicate, even though that doesn't quite make sense, because the duplicate pet dragon struck a bargain with the porcelain dinosaur. So they are two different characters. I am going to pour my green tea though, because I've got a lot of weird things going around in my head right now, and I just think it's time. Let's give this a bit of a stir. Right. Okay, inspiration will come to me immediately, or not. Okay, so the duplicate pet dragon struck a bargain with the porcelain dinosaur. I'm getting Toy Story vibes here, although I probably shouldn't with a porcelain dinosaur. That's more of a collector's item, if we're going to take that literally, although I suppose an older child might have something like that. But I am working on putting together a collection of stories on weird creatures, and I'm generally looking for something more edgy than a straightforward children's story. So what else can I get from this? All I can picture right now is a box of second-hand toys and ornaments secretly jostling for the best position in the box, so they'll be picked up and displayed for sale in a charity shop or a car boot sale. This is still feeling very Toy Story. How can I get away from that? I think I have to be less literal. I was saying that in the introduction, wasn't I? And I've already been going along the literal path. So I must think outside the box of toys, that is. What if... Well, the pet dragon doesn't exactly sound like the name of a shop. But what if we're talking about a shop that sells dragons as pets? Genetically modified, of course, so they only grow to the size of the smallest type of dog, and they don't set light to your furniture. So we're talking pet dragon supplies. Maybe it's the bargain bit in the middle of the sentence that's making me think about business struck a bargain with the porcelain dinosaur. And so there's more than one shop. That's how it's duplicate. They're just starting to branch out. The business owner of the first shop has been introduced to a friend of a friend. She's not really sure about him, but has allowed herself to be convinced into a deal so he can open another shop and it will give her a bit of secondary income. Can she really complain? 2 shops are better than 1, even if she doesn't quite feel under control of the second one and it bothers her. I'm still playing on this feeling of lack of control I was talking about, but this is more subtle. It's just because this guy who's running the second shop hasn't quite been following the brand colours, and he has a thing about keeping the lights slightly dimmed. She, let's call her Tam, visits him one evening just as he's closing up the shop. He's quite strict about not meeting up for breakfast or lunch, says he's keen to put all the daylight hours he can into running the place. Enthusiastic, yes, she can't fault him for that. The young dragons croon softly in their cages, ready for sleep after their evening meal. Dimming the lights makes it more atmospheric, Bill says, wiping the carcass blood onto his apron. How red his tongue is, Tam had never noticed before, the way it slips out between his teeth sometimes when he speaks. Okay, but this is a family chain, Tam says, not for the first time. We don't want to attract the wrong sort. She's thinking of those illegal dealers across town, breeding and selling killer dragons with complete sets of fangs, fire-breathing and everything. Bill busies himself, filling the water bowls of the creatures, but at this suggestion, he stops and glares at her, his eyes strangely sharp. I think I know what kind of shop this is. Besides, he goes back to filling the bowls and pauses to tickle one of the baby dragons under the chin. It murmurs gummily with pleasure. The low lighting keeps the dragons calm. They may be thoroughly domesticated by now, thanks to the genetic modification, but they still remember where they come from. Some part of them does. The deeps of a cave, the odd sparkle of a jewel. Tam frowns and plants her hands on her hips, staring at the side of his head. In every conversation she's had with him, he's moving away from her, doing something else. And he seems to do the same thing with discussions, always taking things to another topic somehow. What else could she say about lighting? Well, what about the new triple-horned greenbacks? They're so green, greener than new grass. How can anyone really appreciate that if you won't switch the main lights on? Bill didn't turn, still whispering something softly to the baby long-winged sapphire, apparently a favourite. Tam huffed and turned to the shop window. This is a narrow street. It doesn't catch much daylight with those big old pubs opposite, blocking the midday sun. All I'm saying is that... Yes? She started. His voice was so close, it was a breath against her cheek. She stared back and found herself locked in those ambient eyes as they narrowed at her, hazel flecked with yellow. She'd never noticed before, and such strange skin. Now that the lamps in the pub across the street were lit, the dull flickers sidled off his pale skin, revealing traces of scale shapes. His tongue slid out, forked, snatching at the air as if reaching for her breath. You were saying? Where where is this going? Is Bill the porcelain, as in very pale, dinosaur? As such, is he a more ancient type of dragon, a cousin to these creatures now being sold as pets? And he's part of an underground movement trying to sabotage this industry. Or maybe it's the illegal trade that he's against. And in fact, he wants Tam's help to track down the breeders and put an end to it. So this, I think this has turned into the owner of the duplicate pet dragon store struck a bargain with the porcelain dinosaur. And we're interpreting dinosaur more loosely, like being a being who is genetically part of the same very broad family of species as dragons, but in humanoid form. So at first, we begin to think he's a monster, but then they'll strike a bargain and work together against the illegal trade of dragons, which is a cruel and extremely dangerous business besides. This idea has made me think about something that cropped up in Philip Athen's book, Writing Monsters, which was a quote from an author, Chelsea Quinn Yarborough, saying, "Most folkloric monsters have something that lessens their advantage over ordinary people, and it alerts people to the danger in their midst." This idea of monsters among us is quite powerful and a great, quite simple method really to introduce a monstrous character to a normal setting, or normal-ish. I mean, while the world I was writing in must be different to ours because people are buying and selling genetically modified dragons as pets, but it otherwise feels like ours. Our protagonist is normal, aside from her trade and the nature of her business. And in a way, it does seem a kind of weakness, a potential weakness in Bill that gives him away, having to hide from bright lights, often turning his back to sort of hide his strange skin and his scales. This could be a way into characterization as well, because it will affect the way he behaves around people, his whole sense of self, his sense of difference to other people. And sometimes a monster story can be about a person's difference to others and their reactions to them. Someone who can actually become labelled a monster or potentially a monster because they're different from other people in society. And that can open up a whole interesting nest of ideas. But I think it's time for another Exquisite Corpse. Okay, so our first word is from Alessandro Bozzo. Steam-powered. Okay, so this seems like it might be some kind of machinery, I think, but sort of old-fashioned machinery, maybe something Victorian. I'm not sure. This is from Sophie de Soles. Master. Ooh, that does make me think of some kind of old-fashioned robots, a steam-powered robot. How could this be? Let me see what action we have for this. This is from Paul Thomas. Haunted. Now there is an action. Oh, but then that just kind of verifies the feeling that this is creepy. A creepy robot. Let's try for another word. This is from Mark. Cleft. Ooh, so that's something, it's either cleft in two, sort of cut in two, or sort of split. It might just be damaged, so it's sort of split down the middle into two parts. That's interesting because that's a very physical kind of word. So again, the beginning part feels quite physical, and this is continued to be physical. Final word is from Sean, also known as Blue Wizard Facts. Ooh, I thought it said Charlie. I can't read my own handwriting. It says chalice. The cleft chalice. Good grief. So yes, I can allow my literal thinking brain to go with this, because we have the steam-powered master haunted the cleft chalice. Ooh. I have had a weird and creepy idea based on steam-powered. Is it really steam or something else? Well, I shall use the pause button a lot. The master of collections, neither man nor machine, lurked in a state that was somewhere in between. He slid over floors with a tick and a pause, fixed a smile at the visitors who erupted in applause. Look at him with that duster. How does he keep the place? All on his own. Is he programmed to the space? He turned with a puff of steam, not quite breath, not quite a thing of life, nor of death. His audience withdrew to the exhibits in awe. The master dusted on regardless a cabinet door, for these were wonders of the world, an incredible collection, gathered by the man he'd been and sealed for their protection. When the visitors went home and he locked all the doors, a shiver rippled down his back, his hand curled like claws. A hunger beat in the metal chest, a memory that flared. A red glow in the shadows of the room, a thing that wanted, cared. It puffed and ticked with a restless malice, and hurried to the cabinet with the cleft chalice. A heavy dent the master recalled from the last victim who sighed, their last breath into the golden cup the moment that they died. It was a precious energy his soul exhaled, but after the victim grabbed and smashed the chalice, it now failed. The master grimaced under his mask. No matter, that didn't end it. He needed no more anyway, just a place to live and tend it. The life breath within him stolen. Undaunted, he bought this old museum and as a cyborg haunted. In plain sight he hid the cup, the secret of his life extension. At 94 he hadn't slowed down. He earned a lot more than his pension. Have I ruined it with that last line? About his pension? Turning this into something humorous? Probably. I always feel on such tenterhooks when I'm trying to write poetry, and I become slightly obsessed with making it all rhyme, which I realise you don't have to do in poetry, but I just like rhyming couplets. I have a thing about it. It's like an incantation, you know? But anyway, I could go back to this and finish it properly, edit it. I should. I will, okay? I might leave in the bit about the pension because I can't help myself. The rhyme's too good. But I just don't think it should finish there. I think if you promise creepiness at the beginning, then you deliver that creepiness. Although you can have a little light relief somewhere along the way, just don't end on that. I think it should gather its creepiness around itself, again like a spooky cloak, and give us one more bit of creepiness at the end. So watch this space. Or rather, look out for my next book, because that's probably where this will land up, with a proper ending, if I can work it out. I don't see myself as a poet, but every now and then something pops out. Something creepy. Okay, so our last exquisite corpse for the day. Okay, so the first word is from Sophie de Soles. Unholy. Ooh, this is feeling dark again. I wonder what word will come next. What or who will be unholy? This is from Sean, also known as Blue Wizard Facts. Camera. The unholy camera. That is a really interesting concept. How could a camera be unholy? Right, I'm going to move on swiftly and see what other suggestions or hints we have about what might be going on here. So our action is from Paul Thomas. Carried. So if it's a camera, it's not going to be carried in the way that a person or even an animal might carry something. It's going to be perhaps information inside the camera. Could you say that that is how a camera would carry something? Ooh, so maybe the next words will tell us what or who has been photographed. I don't know, because if their information is being carried by an unholy camera. Oh, I love that word combination. That's crazy in all the right ways. So our next word is from Paul Benfield. Radiant. Well, that kind of goes. It makes me think of the flash of the camera, because the person or thing that's been captured is radiant, at least for that split second. Okay, next we have final word from Alessandro Bozzo. Astrophysicist. Obviously. Oh God, I don't know what I'm going to do with that now. Just to complicate matters, we have an astrophysicist in our midst. Okay, but never mind, the entire Exquisite Corpse is the unholy camera carried the radiant astrophysicist. I'm still thinking and obsessing about this unholy camera phrase. My first thought is actually an article I read, it's a very long time ago. I must have been a child, no idea where from. I read something about a community of indigenous people who were quite cut off from modern industry, some of whom refused to have their photos taken when a few people just turned up and said, we're going to take your photo because we feel like it, because they believed a camera could capture their soul. Now, this idea is not unique, and I'm sure that when the very first cameras were developed, it would have been so strange to us in the West as well. This is exactly the sort of suspicion that would have been playing on people's minds when cameras first came out. I mean, since then, there are examples of this line of thinking cropping up in fiction as well. I'm thinking The Picture of Dorian Gray, which is a fantasy. It's not about a photograph, but it's about someone whose painting ages while he remains youthful. So something essential about him, his soul perhaps, is captured in the painting. But as I say, that's a painting rather than a photograph, but it's still the same concept. Can you capture a person's soul? And in my second book, Eye for Immortality, the essence of a person's soul is transferred onto a portrait of themselves by using a special glaze with quite disturbing effects. But I cannot say more in case you want to read it. Please read it. So when I think about an unholy camera carrying the radiant astrophysicist, it really sounds to me like a camera is carrying that astrophysicist's soul or mind. And maybe that's where the radiance might come from. Something to do with being captured in the moment of the flash. And now I'm going to use the pause button. You sit in a darkened room on a plastic chair. How did you end up here? Better to just go with it and get it over and done with. Your knuckles brush the top of the chair's cold metal legs as you squirm to get comfortable. And a voice calls from across the room. Hold still. A flash. Spots dance in front of your eyes. You blink hard, but the blobs of light seem out of synchronicity with your blinking, as if the echo of that flash might be entirely independent. A fluorescent bulb shudders on overhead, and the plain, boxy room comes into view. A printer whirs in the corner, but you're not looking at the printer. A man in an indigo cloak, the one who invited you in at the church door, leans over the machine's low, flat mouth until a sheet of card drops into his waiting hand. Smiling, he turns to you and holds out the picture. You open your hands. Honestly, none of this is necessary. I appreciate it, but like I said, I'm looking for my friend. She came here last weekend and I haven't heard from her since. Becca Feromes? Curly dark hair up to about here, slightly shorter than me. Ah, but you're here now. You are retracing her steps, which is a good start, right? Look, he says. His long white fingers whisper over the surface of the print, already apparently cooled. At first, you can't make sense of the image. It's a muddle of smudges, hard to make out. Has he used some sort of filter? Or does the printer have a fault? The outline of your head is barely visible and isn't even in the middle, with your body occupying only the lower third of the photo, hunched and awkward, with your hand brushing the top of the chair leg. Above you, and smothering the features of your face, hang patches of smoke, as if an explosion just went off when he took the photo. It's hard to make out any firm shapes. It's like what the poster says, and the flyer Becca showed you at lunch, the last working day before she called off sick and stopped answering her phone. The Church of the Divine Capture. Have your soul's picture taken and see an image of who you really are in its ethereal reality. The picture is as strange as the advert description, but it still doesn't help. I didn't smell any smoke, you mutter. Through a grin, the man says, Oh, but this is your soul, the essence of your psyche, which cannot be seen through any other means, except the eyes of God and the dead. Let me show you. Here is your intention, he says, pointing to a curlicue of smoke jerking to the left of your head. Here is your lust. He lowers his voice just a little, as if someone might be listening. The tiny queue is far behind. His fingertip meanders around a pinkish gust of smoke, smothering the outlines of your torso, and drawing away slightly to the left again. Noticing your silence, and perhaps that you're frowning, he adds, It's quite common for both intention and other desires to stream from the heart area a little to one side. As if that made sense of it. But it's meant to be. You're struggling to formulate a response because apparently he either doesn't know anything about Becca or refuses to talk about her unless you go through this ridiculous charade first. You should be laughing. It's so bizarre as to be ridiculous, stupid. You can't wait to tell your friends how you did this for a joke, obviously, except that Becca did this and something changed. Was this a bad idea to come here? But something, when she showed you that flyer, the fonts unfurling in a caricature of Victorian superstition, something inside you chimed with curiosity. Those curls of smoke around the edges seemed to hook like beckoning fingertips. And now that you're here, staring blankly at this picture, which is surely faked, the curiosity has twisted back on itself, and you are left with an unsubstantiated fear, as formless as the smoke in the photograph. Clearing your throat, you say, It's meant to be a thing that goes beyond your body, right? Your intentions and stuff. So what does it matter where your physical heart is? Ah, the man says, drawing back a little as if to consider you from a new angle, a secretive smile playing on his lips. You have thought about this. It's true. But the soul lives inside the body, of course, reaching only a little way outside of it. While it is on this plane, he spreads an arm to the blank-walled studio, the window that's boarded up to block out interfering lights from the street. It is anchored to the physical form and is subject to the whims, urges and lusts of the body. The word lusts lingers like a fetid whiff in the air. You gather your coat, check your wallet still in your pocket, and bundle yourself out of there, barely snatching eye contact with him as you murmur your thanks. He knows nothing. This whole thing is stupid. You shouldn't have come. Something else is bothering Becca. Maybe she really is ill, and just not well enough to even answer a text. 4 stragglers stand outside, chatting and stamping their feet against the cold. As you walk out, they stop and stare, their eyes full of questions. You smile and shrug. It's interesting. You stride past without pausing, keeping the photo low and tight against your side, not in the mood for their prying. You turn to close the gate. Their doubtful hesitation over, the queue huddles once more around the warm hub of their conversation, the woman in front craning to see past the half-open door, looking for the man who will show her a picture of her soul. It's only later, in the brightness of your kitchen while you wait for the kettle to boil, that the true image of horror takes form on the photo. As before, your real body and face are little more than a silhouette obscured by smoke. But now those wafting shapes are outstretched claws. Now you see the eyes, as if lit from behind, 2 slits emerging from the head of the beast form that rises above your head. The gap in the smoke between them and where your real hair should be is a yawning mouth, streaked with what can only be teeth, the teeth of a ghost. What is this thing that sat with you, lurched over you while you were in that room? Or is it a part of you? And that is what I think of the unholy camera. Although I didn't quite work out why the unholy camera carried the radiant astrophysicist. If the protagonist of the story and her lost friend Becca are astrophysicists, well, maybe this would have to be some kind of in-joke between them about their curiosity in general, or at least Becca's, because I cannot imagine actual scientists being genuinely curious about a church of divine capture. Even so, even if I haven't used the entire Exquisite Corpse, it was the possibility of a person, whether or not they study the stars, and whether or not they might appear radiant in such a photo, was part of what got me thinking along these particular lines. You'll notice I tried writing it in second person point of view, which is you. It's a new thing for me. I don't think I've ever actually tried it before that I can remember. It's a weird technique because as a reader, you're thinking, well, no, I didn't do that. What do you mean? You did this, you did that. But because the story idea was a particular flavour of odd, I just wanted to try it and go with that oddness. Sometimes stories come out in a particular way and some more peculiar than others. Each story might follow certain basic rules or guidelines as to what generally works, what you know generally works, but each one has its own special atmosphere, and in hunting out that atmosphere, that particularity or peculiarity, sometimes you have to step outside your comfort zone and try something different. Well, on that note, I wonder, I think that really is the best the best word combination that's come up in today's show, the unholy camera. Please tell me what you think of that. What story idea comes into your mind? Between a sentence and a short paragraph is perfect. You know how to get hold of me. Go to annatizard.com and hit the contact button. But please do it by the Friday after the show to make sure that I have time to capture your wonderful story idea, because obviously, as I mentioned last time, I have a recording weekend and then a release weekend, and that is how my rhythm works. So let me know what you think of the unholy camera. Until next time, go forth and be inspired. I hope you enjoyed today's Brainstoryum. You can find out more about Exquisite Corpse and my series, The Book of Exquisite Corpse, at annatizard.com. Subscribe to my e-newsletter and you'll get Volume 1 for free. And while you're there, why not submit a few words to the Socks of Destiny on my play page? You may inspire me or inspire yourself to write a unique new story. See you next time.